Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff, Mosher, Adam Caplan for an Inside the Birds. It's part 2 of our NFL Scouting Combine edition. Now I'm back. I've been back. Adam is back. And for those watching on YouTube, you can tell he was burning the midnight oil many nights there, burning the 4 a.m. oil, as you could say. We're all, it takes, I'm telling you, for people who've never been there or don't know what it's like, man, it's, even 2 days later, I was still exhausted. I mean, it's
really,
yeah, I slept a lot over the weekend to try to catch up because you just don't get a whole lot of sleep when we're out in Indianapolis. And I tell you, Adam, if they move, I know, you and I know they're going to move it. They're going to move it because they're going to think they can make more money somewwer else and make it a hot ticket item for fans. But Indianapolis is the perfect place for the combine. It's typical of the NFL. If something's really great, they're going to figure out a way to mess it up.
Yeah, it's disappointing because we know it's either going to be in Indy. Indy made a bid. L.A., Dallas. To me, of all the cities, I think those are the three that make sense, and it's perfect. I've talked to so many personnel people. You did as well when we were in Indianapolis in Indy last week, and they're all saddened over it. I mean, there's no one who wants it to move. No one, not an agent. Person. Yeah, not even funny. Not even the West. How about this one? This is funny. So I talked to a bunch of West Coast agents. Mm-hmm. They love coming to Indy. They don't mind traveling for it. That tells you how much we love Indy.
Yeah. No, look, I think most of all the NFL coaches and executives like it because it's a great place to keep everybody centralized, including the players. There's a good nightlife as far as restaurants and bars, but it's not like a Miami South Beach or LA. It's not like somewhere where guys are going to get in trouble because they're going to go out of their hotel room. No, they're usually tired. They're preparing to be, poked and prodded and weightlifting. And there's really no temptations. You can go out for something to eat nice and you go back to your hotel room. You start putting this thing in New Orleans or Miami or even Dallas is so spread out. I think that would be the worst place. Like you would never run into anybody in Dallas. I can't imagine it being a good idea really anywhere other than Indianapolis. But we said, the NFL has always got their eyes on something different. And to the chagrin of pretty much everybody, they're still probably going to wind up moving it.
And I guess apparently last Thursday, the first night of the combine on NFL Network, the ratings apparently weren't great. They weren't what they were hoping.
Because they put it on a Friday at night, right?
Yeah, Thursday night and Friday night. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're all now. The workouts are all at prime time now. So,
right.
And that was the challenge for you and I during the week to see people. We'd have to stay up, because basically the workouts are over between 10:30 and 11 p.m. Eastern. Mm-hmm. Then the coaches and executives are coming out, and then because what happened is that they have the interviews before the workouts. They have them during the early evening or late afternoon. So look, we have to, we're up burning, as you said, the midnight oil just to be able to see people. Right. That was certainly the challenge, but look, it's and then the crazy thing was we were joking on our last show. We talked about the weather was going to be good on Saturday. It was 77 degrees. People wearing shorts outside in downtown Indianapolis. It was something to see. I was like, man, why did I not bring shorts?
It felt like the Indianapolis gods' last attempt to try to convince the NFL to keep the combine there. We'll make it warm for you. You want to go to LA? No, we'll just make it warm for you here.
Yeah. And did you see? I don't think Jerry Jones was there. He was ill, I think. But did you see the Cowboys bus?
Oh, sure. See it every year. Every time.
Yeah. It was. You can't miss it. It's so gaudy. It's a beautiful bus. I was in it one time many years ago. But yeah, they always have that going on there. And before we get started here, the one downer I have to tell you, and it's COVID related, is we've talked about this in the past on our show for previous years. Mm-hmm. A Steak and Shake, you can't sit down there. They don't have seating anymore because of COVID, so they only have the pickup.
Are you sure that was COVID related?
Well, I don't know, but
I had heard that there was like a massive brawl there a week or two ago, or something like that, and they had to.
I don't know.
It was better to just
Okay. Oh, a massive brawl. What?
I heard something. There was or either that or some kind of violent altercation that took place, and then they just figured out it was better to do that anyway.
Well, there's something happened pretty serious a couple of years ago on the sidewalk there. Mm-hmm. Whatever the case may be, they didn't have any seating, and I was so bummed because I cannot tell you how much I would look forward to at 1 a.m. sitting down there and having my mint chocolate chip milkshake without
Yeah.
whipped cream, and I just it didn't have the same cachet, so I bagged it.
Well, I might as well tell a funny story, right? I
Very good
don't
story.
should I mention the name or I guess it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I'll mention the name because it doesn't matter. It's in the pub. I told you about it when I was determined to at least get one shake from Steak and Shake there, my
Oh,
Reese's peanut butter chocolate cup.
yeah.
So
Oh, I love that one. I've had it. Yeah, it's
yeah, with whipped cream, by the way.
great.
And I was walking down the street, and there's a guy who plays the saxophone for money
Oh yeah.
right at the cross street before the Steak and Shake, right? So I'm happening upon the intersection, and I see in front of me somebody who looks familiar, but just like always with the NFL and Indy, it's like you know that guy from somewhere or you've seen him before and you can't place it. And I noticed the guy looking at me, right? Like he might have known me from somewhere. So we like made that eye contact, but didn't say anything. And then we start walking across the street. And as we're crossing the street, I recognize, oh, that's Kevin Patullo. He's the, it's called the passing game specialist for Nick Sirianni. He's like the right hand man. So I didn't say anything at that point. I just recognized that was Kevin Patullo. And as we start walking past the saxophone dude, out of nowhere, he starts playing the Rocky theme. You know, and I'm like,
Okay.
what? I looked at myself to see if I was wearing anything from Philly, and I was not. And I looked at Kevin in front. He was about 3 steps in front of me, and he, like a lot of times guys wear their gear, right? Their Eagles or Niners or Giants or whatever. He's not wearing any Eagles gear at the time, right? So I'm like, why did that dude just start playing Eagles theme, like, Rocky Philadelphia theme music? So I just said, hey, Kevin. I just shouted him out. And he turns around. I'm like, hey, I'm Geoff Mosher. So I went up and just introduced myself. And I'm like, did you notice that when we walked past the saxophone guy, he started playing Rocky? He goes, yeah, I didn't understand. I started looking at myself to see if I was wearing my Eagles stuff. I wasn't. I'm like, I know. I did the same thing. Am I wearing something from Philly? I said, how random is that?
It's
Said,
weird.
yeah, that was really, really weird. Now he went out. He had to actually go make a left and book down the other way. I went straight to Shake and Shake. I said,
Oh,
oh,
did
nice to
you?
meet you.
Yeah.
And I went
Yeah.
to straight to Steak and Shake. But how random is that we would
That's
both
weird.
walk by
Yeah.
this guy and he would play a Philadelphia-driven song?
And by the way, everything takes place in downtown Indianapolis is where the combine is. 19 years, I still don't know the name of a street. I think there's a Capitol Street somewhere.
Oh, yeah, Capital and Illinois and Maryland. Come on, they're all named after, like, states.
Right. But the thing is, I only go by, like, if you said, okay, let's meet here, I know where everything is. It's only a 4-block radius. You cannot get lost. It's just, everything's in the middle. You can't. I love when
you can get lost. It's just like you always know where you are, even when you're lost.
Yeah,
because
right.
like,
That's
I've
what I mean.
had trouble
Right.
finding things because
Right.
we're usually drinking.
Yeah, right. We're a little late. Yeah, but the workouts are in the Lucas Oil Stadium. It used to be before it was torn down, the RCA Dome. The RCA Dome was connected to the convention center. So what they did is they left the convention center up. Actually, not all of it. I don't know, half or 3/4 of it. And Lucas Oil's down the street a little bit. It's a little bit of ways. And then what they do is that I didn't go this year on Thursday. I was going to go, but I met some people. Thursday night, they let some of the media in to watch the quarterbacks. But to be honest with you, this group, sorry to say it, but it's so underwhelming. On the surface, of course, some of these guys will become good players, but decided not to go. In fact, the other thing is when you go to watch, because they have you halfway up, and the quarterbacks, you could see them, but it's really good if you ever go to a game and you want to do some scouting, you should bring binoculars. I given that tip many years ago, and when I would go to some pro days, I would take binoculars with me sometimes. Have you been to pro days before?
I have been to a pro day or two before. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
It helps, especially if they're at an adjacent field where sometimes they don't let the media go to certain areas, and then you go, man, I can't see,
Right.
So sometimes my glasses can't get that far. So my amateur eyes need binoculars.
All right, listen, I know a lot of our listeners right now are like, all right, give us the juicy info, the juicy info. We'll get to that. We've got some stuff, but it is important for us to note that, as you mentioned, two big changes. One that we didn't talk about. One was that the annual agents meeting that takes place at the combine was done virtually before the combine, a week before the combine this year. So there were still a decent number of agents there, but not as many as usual. we could say. In fact, some just didn't have guys in the draft this year, so they didn't show up. So there's a little bit fewer agents. And then B, because of the alternated schedule, it was tough to like run into some people you may want to run into there from around the league just because of the time. So as Adam and I like to do, we like to get, we like to make sure what we get is right and is confirmed and verified and double checked. So we both come back from Indianapolis needing to make just do a little more homework. So like I said, we've got names, but I thought this would be like the empty the notebook version, but I think probably next pod will have even more stuff.
Oh, we got stuff.
We're gonna have a ton of stuff. We're gonna have a ton of stuff relative to free agency.
Right,
yeah.
But we don't like, for instance. So what Jeff's talking about, I guess, was it when were they in the Byron Jones sweepstakes? Was it 2 years ago?
That was 2 years ago. Yeah.
So I put out on our show that the Eagles are all in. Nothing's going to deter them. I said this at the combine.
Except for another team with more money. But yeah.
What's that?
I said nothing would deter them except for another team that has just as much money and less state taxes.
It's crazy. They wanted him so badly, and they were a finalist. Jones just decided he didn't want to be on the East Coast. Didn't want to be on the West Coast either. I was down south. It was the three finals were the Eagles, the Raiders, and the Dolphins, and he actually took a little bit less money. But technically, because there's no state income tax in Florida, maybe you could say he got made more money. You'd have to balance it out. Right. But that was one where there was no question. Our sourcing on that was so strong, and I'll be honest with you, I thought they're going to get him because that one went back and forth. This was it was like a boxing match between three teams, and it's the kid. If the kid wants to sign with, he's from Connecticut. I met him when I was at ESPN.
Yep.
He wanted to go to Miami. He wanted to get away. Okay, that's your decision.
Yeah, can't really do much about that, right? No. Not too many people say I want to go to Miami. I mean, they do for the nightlife, but not for the greatnness of the Dolphins organization. So
yeah. So the question would be to you: have you heard? We have some names. We've got I don't know, 3 or 4 names, but there might be. We've heard, as you were alluding to, some names we haven't got confirmed yet, which I'm very curious. One I'm surprised at, but you know what? Schematically, if certain changes are made to this defense, this guy could fit. But we'll get that for you for Thursday. But I don't know if there's that one guy like Byron Jones. That's why I brought the Byron Jones up because 11 Nnamdi Asomugha was their guy, though they were like in, they were out, and they were back in because the money. A couple teams dropped out, so they jumped in. But I don't know. Do you feel like there's any like big name? Oh my gosh, we're hearing. Is there anything you've heard where you feel like, oh yeah, man, I think they're on this guy. We haven't got confirmed yet, but this is a big ticket guy. Yeah.
All right. So like, I don't want to get our listeners all like, like on the edge of their seats, and then we don't give out a name. So I don't want to tantalize. But to your point, I feel like most of the things we've heard are sort of they've shown some interest, or like there's a moderate interest in this guy or that guy. There's one name that I think is a kind of a big name, but I just don't know the level of interest that they're prepared on that. Okay. So I don't want to go any further than that. But I would agree with you. Neither of us kind of came out of this combine with a guy like Byron Jones, where it was so clear that you had 2 years ago that we felt comfortable putting it on our platform. So like I said, next, once we get to make some follow-ups and see how things go, I think we'll be able to have better information. But I agree with you on that one. It's more like, it's just kind of interesting with the little names here and there that come up. Yeah.
The good thing is, if you listen, go ahead. Real quick, if you listen to the Greg Cosell pods that we've done already, some of the names that we'll be bringing up on not only this show but future shows, Greg has talked about already, which is really cool. So what am I going to do? Later today, I'm going to go back. You'll figure it out where I'm going here once we get to some of the names. Because I remember we talked about a couple of these players. I'm like, I can't remember exactly what he said. So I want to match it up with what we're hearing. So,
well, there's one guy we will talk about today that Greg actually talked about on the last week's pod that I thought is pretty relevant. We'll get into that. I just real quick to finish off on the Byron Jones thing, because we sometimes say the best trade is the one you don't make. The best signing is the one you don't make. Him striking out on Byron Jones forced Howie Roseman to go get Darius Slay. I think it's fair to say Darius Slay is a way better corner than Byron Jones. So it's just funny how I wonder if there was a lesson to be learned for Howie in that, as far as, I mean, there was no reason not to like Byron Jones. He's a good corner and they really needed it. But like you're saying, he was prepared to go, and they had already tried to get Darius Slay the year before, I believe, at the deadline. I think you reported
Correct.
that, and
Yeah.
it didn't happen. You just wonder, like, for only a third and a fifth, wouldn't it have been smarter to try to get Darius Slay in the trade market first? Unless you couldn't have done it that way, because the only way they were able to get Slay was after the Jones market had settled. I don't know. I just think that in retrospect, you want Slay over Jones 10 times out of 10. But what happens if Jones says yes at that point?
Well, the only thing is Jones is younger. Now the thing that the Eagles loved is his versatility
Right.
to play slot. He
Yep.
could play safety. He could play corner.
Yep.
And really superior athleticism. But you know what? No offense to him. Slay's a better football player. I don't think you're alluding to it. It's not close. He's just better. I just take the better player. I'm not worried about the versatility. Now, I can tell you the Raiders, they were bummed, but they felt that he had some limitations. He did. Jones showed the ability to cover tight ends, but he didn't play up to his athletic numbers. But because it was Jones, we're talking about guys who were not under contract, Jones, and then everybody else, they felt they had to do it. I just remember calling them, and they didn't seem. They're like, yeah, we need to get him, but like they knew that it was the market. They needed to get him,
right?
And there was just nobody else. In fact, they brought in Eli Apple. They brought him in for physical. They backed off of him. He went to Carolina, and then he went to New Orleans. They just it just didn't work out for them. But as you said, to move this on here, sometimes the best moves you make are the ones you don't make. And I would you nailed that one. That's a good call by you. Yeah. Absolutely, Slay is a home run. He's a leader. He's coached well by Denard Wilson. The Eagles have, by the way, they have a really good defensive staff. Schematically, we've talked about it from Gannon. He's got to move things along here, but the front office has to help him. But as teachers, we're told, they do an excellent job, and that's why the team made the playoffs. Let's people knock me for saying the roster isn't that good. I'm not going to back off of it. It's a very average roster. Top heavy, O-line, tremendous, best of the National Football League, best depth. They got question marks in a bunch of areas, but I understand every team does. But coaching matters, and Sirianni's put together a very good staff.
All right. This week with Greg Cosell, by the way, on the Intel with Greg Cosell, we're going to be going over free agent pass rushers. So we figure the Eagles might be in the market there. So we will talk to Greg. We'll throw a couple of guys, many guys, at him, probably both edge rushers and maybe some DTs. I don't know if the Eagles are going to be hardcore on any defensive tackles in free agency, but you never know. They do like to pad certain positions with one-year veterans. So we'll throw some guys Greg Cosell's way. And Trey Thomas's final fifth part of the 5-part series, Trey on the Tape, will come out Tuesday. And I basically said to Trey, Jason Kelce might come back. He might not come back. We'll talk about this later in the pod. Tell me, figure out from watching tape, like who's best at left guard and right guard if he does, and who's best at center, left guard, and right guard if he doesn't. So I'm going to break that down and kind of try to answer that question for us.
Could we also, if they sign any defensive lineman or offensive lineman, should we get him involved doing some tapes breakdown of these guys?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Just because he's finishing the series doesn't mean we can't come up with it. Well, it's definitely in our plans to have more Trey Thomas on the platform.
Because
people have spoken.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the people are just out of their minds, and we are too. We love him. Love Greg, the work that he does. And we'll have some announcements. Actually, we might have one later this week, which we don't want to hit too strongly, but you guys will be over the moon on it. It'll be, and if it's not the biggest thing we've ever done, it'll be certainly one of them. We're close to agreeing to something that we'll see what happens. We're optimistic, but as always, some of this is not in our hands, so we do the best we can.
That's right. Now you really got everybody at the edge of their seats, Adam. Right. Biggest thing we've ever done.
If it doesn't happen, we'll probably tell you what it is, because we'll be involved. We're going to be involved with this person at some point. So,
no doubt. Anyway. All right, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code ITB and get all your sign-up bonuses. That's promo code ITB to get all of your sign-up bonuses on the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app. Of course, you have to be 21 or older, Pennsylvania only, new customers only, and see DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let us first kind of get into let's set the stage here, Adam, because is it to what's today? People are going to hear this
Monday.
on the 7th, so that means Tuesday becomes a pretty big day around the league to kind of kickstart free agency a little bit with the franchise and transition tag deadline.
Yeah, at 4 p.m. Eastern, right. So today is Monday. So a little bit over as we drop this to you today at 6 a.m. Eastern every Monday and Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
We will have transition and franchise tags around the league. It's really interesting. I guess teams don't like to tag players early unless they absolutely positively feel like there's no way that they'll get an extension done. Though, like with
Right.
Dalton Schultz, I'm pretty certain that he's going to get the tag. That was one of the things that I came out with in terms of some tags I know that are going to happen. But you never know. I mean, because of the Amari Cooper thing, we're going to get to that. That's definitely a huge story. Really interesting what's going on there with the Cowboys.
Huge.
Got a lot of they got a lot of stuff going on. So yeah, but there's no one from the Eagles that I don't see anyone getting tagged. Do you from the Eagles? Even transition?
No, I'm trying to think. Who's the last Eagle to get the franchise tag? I can't remember.
I don't know offhand. Don't know.
It wasn't LJ Smith, right? It had to be somebody after that, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, let me ask you this question: did they pull
Not
it off?
been too many though. I mean,
yeah. No, because you know what? No, because they get guys done early. No, but did they put the tag on Simon then rescind it? Was that the one?
Yes,
and
yes, a long time ago. Right.
Trot too? Did
Right.
they pull Trot too, or I can't remember.
Yeah, in 2002. In 2002, they did put it on Trot. LJ
but
Smith,
no, but
2008.
did they pull it?
They put it.
Did
I know
they
pull it. I can't remember. I don't.
But
remember.
I thought Simon for sure. I thought they tagged him then rescinded it before he signed it.
Yeah, they definitely did that. Yeah,
once
they
it's
put it
signed,
on Vic.
Vic, okay,
Right, Vic in 2011 and Deshaun in 2012. I don't know that they've used it on since 2012. That's 10 years.
Really, Deshaun? Really? Wow.
So I think they put it on Deshaun, but then wound up agreeing to an extension.
Oh, which you can
before. So I don't think Deshaun played under the franchise tag. I don't want to speak out of place, but
that sounds right. But it is interesting. Yeah, they have not. It's funny as you're saying, I'm like, man, I cannot remember the last time that they tagged anyone because they're so aggressive in getting contracts early done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of why they've been able to build within the cap as well as they have. Other than the last year, which was a disaster because the dead money on the Wentz trade, right. They balanced the budget so well. And this year, they're I mean, I hate to say they're swimming cap space. They're somewhere between 25 and 27 million as we speak here Monday morning. Mm-hmm. We'll see if it drops. We'll see if it makes. We'll get into kind of what it means, but they're in good shape. They can do whatever they want, and that's why I was wondering, as we left the combine this past weekend, had you heard any big names? And there was one defensive player. We'll give you a small hint that we both heard, but we want to confirm before we mention it. I'll give you a hint. We talked about it with Cosell, one of these players.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, but again, see, as we explain this, and by the way, the open negotiation period, which we call the open tampering, begins next Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern. It ends 3:59 on Wednesday, which I love, which is in the league's calendar, which they sent us. And then the league year opens next Wednesday on the 16th. Cannot be higher than $208.2 million. Got to be that or under. And the Eagles are in great shape there. So they're good. And then the RFA tenders are due by next week.
Let's go through that. Yeah. RFA tenders.
Yep. So first round of $5.562 million. Now, these are from the NFLPA records, which we obtained. Been in my email, and I was like, let's hold them until we get to the free agency period. So, and then second round tenders, $3.986 million. This is based on the cap at $208.2 million. Unless something changes, this is what they're going to be. Then the low / right of first refusal tender for undrafted players. The low tender, anyway, is $2.433 million. So, yeah, it's the only one I could see that makes sense is Herbig because he's so important as a backup guard center. I mean, the guy started a bunch of games. He's been a great story of development as an undrafted free agent. I know they like Jack Anderson, who played well at center, but he's barely played. That to me is too much of a risk. But I mean, it's one thing if they didn't have enough cap space. They do. You don't let guys who are this valuable away. And I know Roseman preaches about the depth, and he loves having the offensive line. That's why, I remember talking to one of the teams who called the Eagles for Dillard. They actually mentioned that they felt how he wanted because he thought they had a chance to be in the playoffs, and he wanted to keep his depth at the trade deadline. And but although I still think I thought then, and I think now, I know they deny that they ever put a round that they'd accept, but several people told me, and I think you and I have talked about this. I think a third gets it done for Dillard. I really do.
I would think so. I would think a third gets it done for Dillard. The 2.43 low tender, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is for backup players. So while I would agree with you that it's worth it for Herbig, especially right now, because you don't have certainty on your situation with Jason Kelce at center, and we'll talk about. But I would say ordinarily that's still a pretty high price tag for a backup type player. Remember, Boston Scott and Alex Singleton are also
it's got to be
stand to be RFAs.
Right.
I can't imagine that for either of those guys.
No, but again, Herbig is so important for. Let's assume Kelsey's coming back. I mean, it would shock me if he's not back, based on what we'd heard at the combine and what we've heard for months. Nothing has changed. But as you said on one of the previous shows, unless he changes his mind, we're not him. It never goes to never say never category, or bucket as we call it. It would be a shock if he doesn't return, because he ended the season well, healthy. He hasn't felt like this we heard in years to end the season. So I know he's a father, and eventually, he's going to have to say goodbye to the Eagles. But I'm sure he'll be around the team. As a lot of ex-Eagles, man, love coming back. They're treated really well by Jeffrey Lurie and just the organization. That's why they like having as you know, you've covered the team for a long time. The players like coming back.
Right. So back to Herbig. If they do pay him the low round tender at $2.4 million, I still think though they have to figure. It might portend to me that they're going to do something at guard, because they've got, again, we'll mention this many times, they've got three guys who are for two spots if Kelce comes back, and that's Jack Driscoll, Isaac Seumalo, and Landon Dickerson. Dickerson ain't going anywhere. Yeah. And I don't see Jack Driscoll going anywhere based on how he's played in his young career. So what do you do with Isaac Seumalo? Do you move him? I don't know. But
but I think you're missing the point. Who's the backup center if Kelce comes back?
Could be Isaac Seumalo, although he's too high priced to be
at $5 million. Right. So to me, this is your point, though. This is what we need to get at on your point about Isaac. If Dickerson's your left guard, and right guard now is Isaac, you're set. And Herbig is your top interior backup guard.
No, Driscoll would still be your top interior backup.
I see. Here's the question. I know he can do both. They seem to. I know he started at guard. I get that, but he also is your top backup right tackle. There's no question about that. I mean, he can do that. To me, I know LaRaven Clark's back, but I'll be honest with you. To me, Driscoll is more important than LaRaven Clark. So
I agree.
Now, of course, part of this, what happens now with Dillard? Do they trade Dillard?
Right. Well, that's to my point, that someone's got to be moved just based on finances alone. Someone has to go.
See, $5 million for a starting guard, quality guard like Seumalo is pretty good, but he's missed so much time. As you said, Dickerson's playing. There's no question about it. Right guard, to me, I don't want to say it's fluid. I mean, it's Seumalo's job. I mean, it would have been Brooks, but he's not back. Could Isaac play right guard?
That's a big question too, because I don't think Isaac has ever played right guard.
Right.
He was a tackle at Oregon State. Left tackle, or I think it was left tackle.
Left at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he came here and he has played outside of his rookie year when he was the sixth. They would bring him in and put him at the end of the line as the tackle eligible, or like an extra 13 personnel, which would be on the. He did put that on. They put him on the right side, but I mean that was 4 years ago now, and he's basically been the left guard since. So I don't know. They got to figure this out. Nick Sirianni said at his press conference, we know we've got sort of an embarrassment of riches here, and we don't have to make that decision now. They don't have to make the decision as far as who to play now, but they really kind of do have to make a decision of who's going to stay and who's going to go and how are they going to make the money work.
Yeah, and it's it's funny. It has nothing to do with cap. It's about justification of paying a guy. It,
Exactly.
Say Malo cannot be a $5 million backup. It's just not. It's not
That's
acceptable.
exactly it.
Right?
Right.
You just can't.
Right.
They could be 50 zillion under the cap. It has nothing to do with it. It's about justifying paying a guy like Herbie as a $2.4 million backup who started a bunch of games,
Mm-hmm.
got great versatility. You could justify that. In
Right.
fact, I don't know if they'll do this, but I mean, you could always go to them. Hey, listen, we're not. You're not starting, so we're not. We don't feel like we could pay you 2.4. We just don't think you fit in like that. We'll
Mm-hmm.
pay you 1.4. We'll give you upside if you. We'll give you incentives to bump you up to 3 if you start a certain amount of games or play a certain amount of snaps, which you can do. It's a way to
So
make
you're
up
saying
for it.
not tendering him and trying to bring him back as a free agent for less than the tag or less
Right,
than the tender number?
right. Just again,
Would you risk that? That's a risky proposition
well,
right
it's not a
there.
risk because you just work it out with the agent. You just tell them,
No, 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 no.
Nate.
My point is, it's risky because I think there are teams out there that would be willing to pay Nate Herbig more, equal or more than the tag, because that's how bad offensive line play is.
Oh, well,
I
I'd
shouldn't
say
say
this
tag.
though.
I should say tender. Yeah. So
Yeah,
you might risk having to pay more if you want him back.
well, no, I would say this: if they could not work it out with this, again, I'd be very. What we had heard is they like to have him back, but we don't have it confirmed whether it's on the tender or do they want to decline to tender him and work it out with his agent. Hey, here's what we're offering, and as you said, and you're right,
Mm-hmm.
he could say, "Oh, I'm not doing that. I'll go to this team that will give me a chance to actually start or like me enough that they'll let me compete.
Right.
Maybe they'll give me at least 2.4 and change." With upside. Yeah, you're right. He could decline it. And look, that mechanism, every NFL team does it, where they
Right.
work with the agent and say, listen, the money's too big. We just don't think he's that. We think he's this.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give you upside, yes or no. And they could either say yes or no. And that determines where the guy
Yeah.
comes back.
Yeah, I want to make it clear. I'm not trying to convince people that Herbie is like a stud or anything like that. He's a good player. He's played adequately. He's got flaws, and we know we've seen some of the bad snaps, but the state of interior offensive line play around the league is so bad that I could see a team saying, "Hey, the Eagles are pretty good at producing linemen here. We're going to give Nate Herbig a couple million, tell him he's going to come in and compete to start and probably win the job for us." So that's the only guy of all the three, him, Boston Scott, and Alex Singleton, that I would really worry that I'd have a trouble just kind of with a wink nod deal on the agent saying you'll come back at this price,
I mean,
because there might be competition.
well, he's played so much that you could
Mm-hmm.
just 2.4 you could absolutely justify. Now,
Mm-hmm.
RFA tenders are not guaranteed. They're just a contract with no guaranteed money.
Right.
You could agree to guarantee it, but it's really not done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting dilemma. It's so the Eagles are so deep at the O line, deepest by far in the National Football League, and we didn't even talk about that. We're not doing an offensive line show, but Opeta is a guy that they like. They keep bringing him back, and yet another undrafted free agent,
Mm-hmm.
Oishika, the kid who played left tackle, is a little bit shorter at University of Buffalo. The Eagles see him as a guard tackle guy who they're
Right.
very high on, super athletic, who's a good football player.
Yep.
It's just an embarrassment of riches. It's just this is why this team is just good most years because they're when you're strong. Joe Douglas, by the way, he said it. He goes, "You got to be strong. It starts on the offensive defensive lines." He just talked about it last week, and
Right.
this team generally is.
All right, let's do it. All right, we'll move on. Talk about some other free agency around the league. First, I wanted to remind everybody about our new partner, Devicor. Over the last year, we've seen it. It's been the Great Resignation. Society has made it clear that there's no better time to change careers than the present. Devicor is a Philly area family-owned career development company that helps guide hardworking professionals on the path to new and fulfilling careers. Unlike those big companies in the career development space that offer the same cookie cutter advice and services, Devicor's certified career development team is hands-on, passionate, knowledgeable, and takes pride working closely with their clients to ensure that their experience is personalized and tailored to their needs. So whether you're in need of a new resume, a cover letter, CV, or you want to optimize your LinkedIn profile, or just work with a career coach, Devicor has you covered in all spaces. So go to devicor.com/birds to schedule a free 15-minute career coaching consultation, and you get an exclusive 15% discount off your next order. That's devicor.com/birds, folks. Take up the coaching career advice. It's invaluable. We can tell you that. All right, let's talk a little bit about the big news around the NFL. Adam, came out the other day. The Cowboys being likely to cut Amari Cooper. So I'm a little surprised at this. I mean, I
Really?
know that he's got a. Well, I'm surprised that they're going the route of let's cut Cooper and try to keep, I guess, Michael Gallup and Dalton
That's
Schultz,
right.
because
Right.
I'm more of a give me the game changer than I'm not like a more the merrier type guy. Give me as many blue chip game changers as I got, and I feel like I'm more of a devastating team. So I would say goodbye to Gallup and Schultz, and I would want Amari Cooper back if I were running a franchise.
The
Although I know that Cooper can be difficult at times. Yes.
He's Mercurial. He's a very talented kid. He's a high character guy, but he's just sometimes he doesn't show up. I mean, I remember the former staff, Cowboy staff, talking to them, and they didn't speak very highly of him about competing every game. Like that game, they needed to win. There's one in Philly when I went in the locker room. Yeah, it tells you how long it goes. I've been in the locker room in a long time, but they lost here, and it was like a week 17 through I think 4 years ago. And Cooper admitted he got benched for lack of competition. You can't see when they did this deal, this 5-year extension. It had a 2-year structure. Everyone who was involved with the contract knew they're going to have to revisit this after 2 years. Why?
Right.
2 years, $40 million, fully guaranteed at signing. Then the third year only had what their injury guarantees were complete nonsense. They never matter. It's just window dressing for a deal. So right now, his $20 million for 2022 is guaranteed for injury only. It becomes fully guaranteed on the 5th day of the league year, which is March 20th. So they have to cut him or trade him by the 19th. They made a decision that, just checking into it, they were not going to offer him, as far as I know, a pay cut. To cut him down to like whatever number. They've got a cap challenge. DeMarcus Lawrence was asked to take a pay cut, by the way. He's had a really gifted player, their best pass rusher, certainly, for many years, although Randy Gregory's come on. That one may not end up pretty well. It is amazing. I love what the Eagle fans say, that the best thing happening to their division is Jerry Jones, because they can never get it right. How well they draft. There's truth to that, man. I was sick of that when I was down there, because I was talking to some Cowboys people. They were like kind of frazzled because they have so many things going on. And as you mentioned, Gallup, as you and I speak here Monday morning, I'm told that they were not close as of Wednesday. Friday. There was nothing imminent, but they were working towards it. They definitely want him back. He wants to be back. They think they're going to get it done within 24 to 48 hours, barring a snag. But as you said, let's not forget, Michael Gallup tore his ACL.
Right.
And though I'm told it's a clean ACL tear, look, that's, it's the leverage, obviously, with the club. The only receiver that I could come to mind who the next year coming off an ACL did very well was Allen Robinson with the Bears. He signed a monster deal back, whatever it was, 4 years ago, 4 years ago. But he did great. And it was like, wow, I would not have done that deal if I was the Bears, but I got to give him, they obviously had good information on his knee. But, they have CeeDee Lamb. And then Dalton Schultz is really good. Boy, he came out of nowhere. He's a stud. And Blake Jarwin had a hip injury, which was reported by one of the outlets. And he had the ACL, and then he has a hip problem. So they almost have to keep Dalton Schultz. So you don't normally see correct me if I'm wrong, the Eagles have really, other than last year, obviously, we everyone knows what happened with Wentz at the contract, but have they had any cap issues where they had to start cutting really good players? They're just not into doing that. Do you remember this happening with the Eagles?
No. No, they just restructure guys until the cows come home. So
there you go. Thank you.
That's all they do.
You're right.
But we have seen the Cowboys get burned by this. I mean, it's been a while, but I mean, I remember when they did this with DeMarcus Ware, and then he went to Denver and won Super Bowl rings because he's a great player. So we'll see what happens with Amari Cooper. I mean, if you're an Eagles fan, if you're an Eagles fan, I would rather have to face the Cowboys with Michael Gallup coming off an ACL and Dalton Schultz than Amari Cooper. That's just me personally, but
I hear you.
I mean, I know they've beaten the Cowboys with Amari Cooper before, but they've also lost. So,
and he's been like feast or famine against. He's had some games where you go, oh my, he just destroyed them, and then some games he sometimes takes himself out of games. So that's as the Cowboys turn.
Yeah, there you go. we saw just around the NFC East, we saw reports that that Washington made a big play for Russell Wilson, struck out there. So it's pretty clear that they're involved in a quarterback. We all know that they need. Someone made this point to me, and I think it's an accurate one. What'd they go 7-9? Or
Sounds right.
7-10, right? Is that what
Yeah.
it was? Because there's an extra game this year. They
Yep.
went 7-10 with a backup all year long. What would they have been if they had like a decent, not even a great quarterback, but a normal starting quarterback? What would they have been? Might have won 9 or 10 games. Would have been more competitive.
Yes. Yeah, they were 7-10. No, yeah, the Wilson was from NFL Network, and the report was that they offered 2 first round picks. That's not going to get it done. You got to offer at least 3.
Yeah.
That's still, I'm told, coming out of the combine, the compensation is at least 3 first round picks for Deshaun Watson. No legal clarity right now on Watson. I know there's still rumors out there, so we'll see. But I've said this now since our shows at Thanksgiving. This is the worst year to need a quarterback. And I'm not making fun of Mitch Trubisky. I'm not. He's going to get a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
You shot him on spec. You're hoping that he could get back to where he was or even be better. Remember, they did make the playoffs twice with him as the Bears started quarterback. But
Right.
I mean, this is just not. It's not a great draft class. I know some of these guys will try to be better than people think. For your class, and then unless you trade for somebody, I just don't know how you're going to. Unfortunately, demand is outliving supply right now. They're just not good enough quarterbacks out there.
No, definitely not. All right, we'll see what happens. Do you sense that Russ is just going to stay in Seattle at this point?
They've made it clear that they don't want to trade him, but they've not said they're not. Like last year, when teams called last spring, they told teams, we're going to get through the issues that he's having with us, and we're going to let sleeping dogs lie. Just not blow this up. Russ could say what he wants, and they did the smart thing. It all died down. They got through the season.
Right.
But his belief is that the offense should go through him, not through the running game. Pete Carroll's is Mike Zimmer, but just a nicer person. Zim coaches a certain way. He's gone through. Not a secret. He went through a bunch of offense coordinators over the years. Some moved on. Some were fired. Pete also has lost some coordinators who he dismissed. He's an old school, wants it to go through the running game, doesn't believe in analytics. So Russ wants it to go through him. They'll never agree on anything, but Pete's not getting fired. He got an extension a year ago. He still has personnel control. And Pete doesn't want to move Russell Wilson. But the thing that surprised me is Pete Carroll never said they wouldn't trade him. He said it's their intention to keep him, the intention not to trade him. Well, that didn't say he wouldn't trade him. That's the difference.
That's true. The wiggle room there. So is it really just on Russ then? If he wakes up one day and says, I definitely want out of here, then they're going to have to accommodate.
Well, he has a no trade clause.
No, I mean, they don't have to. But yeah.
No, they don't have to move him. No, now he could cause a problem. It's not like him to do that, but he did. I mean, let's face it. He claims he never asked for a trade, but his agent leaked to several reporters who called him, hey, well, we're not saying we want to be traded, but if they're willing to, here are the teams we improve. So
right. Now, he was recently on some show somewhere, and I forget what it was, and they asked him, about where he'd like to play, or if not, something of them. And he said he's not a fan of the East Coast, is what he said.
Oh,
basically.
Okay. Right.
So
see, Eagles. Sorry. Okay.
There we go. We move on then. What do we got else around the league? Cole Beasley has permission to seek a trade. That usually means guys not coming back.
Yeah, so he's on the fine waivers deal. He's a roster bonus deal, as I'm told. So what happened is Emmanuel Sanders really didn't work out for them. Gabriel Davis will start on the outside. He also has played the slot, but he'll start on the outside. Obviously, Diggs, who's their Z. And then they'll figure it out. They'll have to add Isaiah McKenzie's also another guy they need to bring back as a free agent, but he's an older player, but he's very productive. Cole Beasley's a really good football player. So, though Brandon Beede, their GM, did not. He told whoever asked him, basically, whether it's NFL Network or local papers, that they're not. They'd like to have him back, but he didn't say at what salary cap number, and that's the challenge.
Right. All right. The only big like NFL news that was kind of like, whoa, was Brian Greasy leaving the booth to take the San Francisco 49ers quarterbacks coach job. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Niners just
So,
like grabbing guys out of the booth now, don't they? They got their GM out of the
well,
booth, the quarterbacks
yeah,
coach out of the booth.
this is interesting. Yeah. So, I'm going to say Friday afternoon, I heard about this. And then I guess ESPN and myself heard about it, and the ESPN put it out first. And then with like 5 minutes, I got the names who interviewed, and one of them was John DeFilippo, the former Bears and quarterback coach. Obviously, was here with the Eagles, won a Super Bowl here in Philly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they talked to two college coaches, at least two college coaches, and now I think what they're going to do is they're going to probably move one of Kubiak's other sons, Gary Kubiak's other sons, who's on the defense as an assistant quarterback coach, is what I'd heard. But Brian Greasy, I'm told, has never coached before. So, and I loved him, by the way. He's a terrific broadcaster. Like, he's really smart.
Yeah. Well, he must have had a great interview. I mean, to have no teeth in the game there, other than you play the position.
I don't understand. Like, what? And and that 20 years ago was with Kyle Shanahan's dad, and that's obviously the relationship. Kyle knows Brian obviously many years, but that's a little shaky to me to hire a guy who's never developed a quarterback, and you've got the biggest project quarterback in Trey Lance. That's shaky. Kyle's a great coach. I mean, he's terrific, but this is, more power to Brian Greasy. I look forward to seeing him in next summer. But man, that's they're a really good team too. That's a real big challenge for them. But that definitely, when I heard this Friday afternoon that this is in the works, I was sort of like trying to like, when you hear things like this, your first response is, what? No. Yeah. And I was like, okay, this is actually
apparently.
I called 3 people I thought would know, and 2 people said, yeah, it's happening. Not only is it happening, they made a decision actually 48 hours ago. I'm like, really?
Right.
Jeez, okay.
Wow. Well, there'll be a new crew then for Monday Night Football on ESPN.
We know.
We'll see what they film.
Yeah.
That's right. Of course, Aikman. Yeah.
It's from many reports, New York Post and others, that it's going to be Troy Aikman. Yeah. Wow.
Right. All right. We'll get into some Eagles news that we heard out in the Combine out in Indianapolis. First, I want to tell everybody to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fan experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you're checking out all their great work, and follow them on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.com. We'll pause real quick for another word from our great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. And if you hop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. All right. Again, we're going to have a lot more as we go along, but I think a couple of names, a position really that you and I heard through various sources that the Eagles have been checking into, and nobody will be surprised, is the wide receiver position at various different levels, different guys. It's a very diverse set of receivers in free agency. I mean, you've got some amazing ones like Godwin and Devontae Adams, and you've got a really nice middle class. And even some names who are probably versatile guys who can return punts and things too that aren't maybe per se starters, but can be valuable on teams. But the one name, Adam, that you and I both came across differently, which is always good when we kind of get the same, is Juju Smith-Schuster. He's a guy who we're confident in saying that the Eagles have a degree of interest in. Now, I mean, you can probably wind up saying a lot of teams have a degree of interest in a lot of guys, so we're not blowing anything up here. But if I'm not mistaken, I thought they may have had interest in him last year at this point. I can't remember if they got shut down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it actually got shut down. Yeah.
All right. But, Juju's an interesting guy because he had that year a couple of years ago. He had 1,400 yards. I think that was his second or third year in the league. And then he hasn't been nearly as productive as a player. But he's certainly a guy, and he was hurt last year. I mean, he's a talented guy. There's no doubt about it. And so I imagine the Eagles will not be the only team that are looking to try to bring him in, or at least have some interest in him, I should say. So we'll see what results from that.
Yeah, his second year was a monster, like huge.
Yeah.
He was a second rounder in 2017. He turns 26 later this year, so he's relatively young by NFL standards. He's pretty healthy in the first 2 years, and then unfortunately, the last 3 seasons. Actually, no, two out of the last 3. 2020, he was healthy.
Hmm.
2021, here's what the Steelers loved about him. He had significant shoulder surgery. He was not supposed to return, but he did. He toughed it out, and he came
Hmm.
back for late in the season, which shows really good toughness. At 2020, the thing that is disappointing, though, he became a possession receiver. He became like a guy that could play, and he still does. He plays inside and outside. And we'll get a little bit into that, the breakdown that we on him that we know about from various personnel sources around the league. But he came in as a playmaker. I think he might have been 20 years old when he came in. He was one of the youngest players and he's either 20 or 21, but I think he might have turned 21 after he was drafted or something like that. But yeah, this will be his 6th year. Yeah, he was definitely 20 when he was drafted, and then turned 21.
Right.
But really gifted kid, high character, a lot of energy. The Chiefs made an offer. In fact, the Chiefs were totally miffed why he didn't sign with them last year.
Hmm.
But he does score in the red zone. He's good to run after the catch guy. He's got inside outside versatility. Just a good football player. But you just have to figure out how you would use him. So what else have you heard?
Well, you kind of wonder about the market for him because, he's coming off the injury. He's had really one monster year, and the other years have been okay. I mean, his rookie year was pretty good too, but really from 2019, 20 to 21, his best season was 2 years ago when he had 97 catches for 831 yards, 9 touchdowns. It's actually a pretty good year. Remember that Steeler offense 2 years ago was it was bad last year, but it was really bad 2 years ago as well.
Yeah.
So I see the league looking at him as a talented receiver, and they're still trying to see if he's got a lot left from what he had those first 2 years. But clearly he's been injury prone. So a couple of people I spoke to who like him wonder if he's going to get more than a 1-year deal, though, coming
Yep.
off of playing just 5 games. In fact, I did hear that the Steelers would like to bring him back as well, but I think they're in the same boat as everybody else in that they're not sure how much of a commitment they can give to him with the injury that he's coming off.
So a couple things. Yeah, he played all 2020. He played all games 2 years ago. This
Mm-hmm.
season had a shoulder surgery, so he's limited to only 5 games. I would tell you this, and you made a great point in passing here, which cannot be underestimated here. Juju could run. Okay, that's the problem. Was not him. He
Mm-hmm.
became a possession receiver because that's what the offense became. Ben Roethlisberger couldn't throw the ball downfield. Remember, Ben had the elbow surgery. Randy Fiechner, the OC, who wound up getting fired, was calling all intermediate to short passes because they wouldn't throw the ball downfield. And then so did Matt Canada. Now I would tell you, I talked to Canada last summer, and he felt that Ben's arm was coming back. But you know what? Before Juju got hurt, he had the same yards per catch average as he did in 2020, 8.6, which is an unbelievable drop because he had although he was hurt in 19, he missed 4 games. He was averaging 13.1 yards per catch. In Juju's first year, just under 16 yards per catch at 15.8. So he can run.
Right.
So that plays to your point. It was really, to me, more a structure of who the quarterback was. And I think we have to point that out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they will take shots here. Look, the thing about Hurts is, I know people complain about his arm. He's shown the ability to throw the ball downfield. I know he's not a great accurate passer downfield. Not many are, but you can throw the ball downfield with him. And I think Smith-Schuster would be a good signing. So,
yeah, I was just to illustrate that point real quick, a little more, because I was having a really in-depth conversation with someone who's familiar with what the Steelers do about specifically receivers and their offense, because I was asking around about Juju.
Sure.
And to the point we're making, you take a player like Deontay Johnson. He's a really good receiver. Now has had some drop issues, was better at it last year, but he had 169 targets, 107 catches, 1,161 yards. He's not the type. He's a really good receiver. He actually should have fewer catches. He's not a volume receiver, but he should have a way better yards per catch average. Right? Last year was like 10.5. All right. He's the type of receiver. If you would put him in a more dynamic, like a Kansas City offense, he may only catch 70 to 80 balls, but he's going to have 12, 13, 1,400 yards, 8 or 9 touchdowns because they're going to use him as the take a top off the defense type of receiver that he's not being in Pittsburgh. So you can kind of apply that same thinking to Juju, that you may get a better version of Juju out of that offense now and away from Ben Roethlisberger when you're putting him with the right pieces.
Yes.
And as far as go ahead.
Who's the quarterback?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you put him with the right quarterback and
Yeah,
pieces,
but
I don't, I have no
see,
idea.
if you're Juju Smith-Schuster, and I don't know who his agents are, but if whoever they are, um, you got to find. Look, Mason Rudolph's not the answer. We all know
Right.
this.
Right.
And Haskins, I believe they're going to tender him a low tender. That's the word I got from the combine.
Hmm.
He has an arm, but he's a major project. So you don't really have a viable starting quarterback. Now, I know Pro Football Talk had the report about potentially if Rodgers asked to be traded, the Steelers are one of the teams that he wants to go to. Then that's a different story. If you're Juju, you would want to go back to play with Aaron Rodgers. That changes the paradigm.
Right.
But I'm telling you, man, I think Trubisky might be on the radar, but
Hmm.
is he enough to make you want to play there? I would rather play with Hurts. That's just me. How do you see that?
Well, I mean, I'd probably rather play with,
Mahomes.
Mahomes or somebody else that's going to
Oh,
offer me that has a
they
dynamic
want him.
quarterback.
They made an offer last year. The Chiefs did, and he
Hmm.
spurned it. And in fact, I think Juju went on Twitter last year and said either he tweeted what Andy said or he paraphrased it
Hmm.
about. I think Andy might have texted him or something.
Hmm.
But yeah, what we've heard is I think you put out on our show last week. They have interest in bringing back Byron Pringle.
The
Uh,
Chiefs do. Yeah,
yeah,
they like him. Yeah.
yes. But they still, I heard the Chiefs they're still interested in Juju. So we'll have to see. Now, the money we had heard is the working money that teams have is 8 to 10 million per
Hmm.
season on a short-term 1 or 2 year deal.
Hmm.
Um, feel that it would be a lot more had he not been hurt, but understand this. He's fine now, but understand this. There are a lot of receivers out in free agency. I'm not saying they're a lot like Juju who could play inside or outside. So to move this along before you get to the next player,
Hmm.
how do you think the Eagles might see him? Like, we're because he could do both, right?
Yeah. So good question, right? Because Greg Cosell with us last week when we did wide receivers talked about, we asked him about Juju Smith-Schuster in general and how in the Steelers offense, when he was healthy last year, the 5 game, he played a lot of slot. But Greg said that he felt Juju has the physical abilities to win from the outside and won from the outside at USC very frequently. So Greg said he could be an outside receiver. And it's my understanding that if the Eagles were to bring him in and get him signed, it's not slot specific. Like they're not just looking for him to be a slot
Oh, okay.
receiver because they
Okay.
have other guys. Obviously, we've talked about this. They don't have those. I think you reported once that they don't really talk about it in specific terms of X, Y,
Yeah,
or
they want
Z,
inside
or
or outside. Yeah.
right, inside or outside. And obviously, they've played both Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, and Jalen Reagor all inside and outside. So it'll be interesting to see if they would do that alternate or if they're looking at him to be an outside receiver so that they can move Quez to the slot and put Devontae Smith at the Z. And what that means for Jalen Reagor, I have no idea. Or maybe they're going to work Reagor in at slot along with Quez or have some kind of rotations. I really don't know. But all I know is that he's not just being the interest in him isn't just slot specific.
And a couple teams we that I was able to talk to during the week said that when they looked at Juju Smith-Schuster,
Mm-hmm.
definitely would be in the slot in on third down. Like when you're going to go wide, you want him inside. And
Mm-hmm.
also, if you're going to come in with a run based offense, he actually is a willing blocker where you play him inside.
Yeah.
So he's a good player, man. This I think whoever gets him is going to get a break on the money because he's coming off a significant injury. It's hard to justify paying him. Chark is more of a Chark runs better in terms of what teams like. If you look at Chark doesn't have Juju's versatility, but Chark's a better deep threat than
Mm-hmm.
Smith-Schuster. And it always
Mm-hmm.
depends what you want. But and also Chark is had net. I wouldn't call Juju injury prone. I'd just say he's 2 out of the 5 years he's had some injuries. But where Chark pretty much has had injuries each year, and then he obviously had the broken ankle last season. It was a good football player. I know people keep asking us about Chark on the Eagles. We heard some things. We're not totally sure because the thing with Chark is his money's going to be way up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that they'll go there for a guy it's hard to justify. The Eagles have tried their best. We know that they like Chark a lot. They liked him last year. We mentioned on a previous show that they checked into that rumor, which turned out to be false, about that he was available
Right.
last year. But I just don't know. We're not clear. It's the thing that teams don't talk a lot about money during the when they're there, because when the rules changed about 10 years ago to go to the open negotiating period 2 days before free agency opens, the doors
Yeah.
that
Yep.
changed. Teams started to stop talking money at the combine. Agents would tell me, or not
Well,
very much.
no, they call it like ballpark instead of exact figures.
Oh yeah, they won't.
Yeah.
But now the top guys like Byron Jones, teams knew what he wanted when they left. They knew exactly the ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some of the middle tier guys, they're trying to extract information from agents. It's kind of the shell game that teams play.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, let's move on to another name we heard. And admittedly, I was like, I got to do some homework on this because it's not exactly a household name. But the funny thing is, you heard the name too. So when we both were like talking about it, I was like, all right, that's pretty good when we can hear it from different sources. The guy's name, and he's a wide receiver, but he's also really a kick and punt returner from San Francisco. His name is Richie James. Adam, what do you know about Richie James other than there's some apparent Eagles interest in him?
Yeah, it's funny story about Richie James. So for those of us who play fantasy, you might remember it was a Thursday night game 2 years ago during the early COVID period, and unfortunately, Debo Samuel is not available that game, I think, and he went up starting. And when I say he went off, he went absolutely off. And this is in 2020. There was like no way anyone would have picked him up.
Right.
But he wound up having, it was a Thursday night game.
Oh yeah, it was 9 catches for 184 yards and a touchdown.
And I
Packers.
cried because you couldn't pick him up. No one knew.
Mm-hmm.
And they could not guard him. Now I know they got blown out that game 34-17, but he looked super explosive.
Right.
But our understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong here, they're more into the word we heard from several people was that Philly seemed to be they're definitely looking to improve their punt return kickoff game. Obviously James plays receiver great, but that's not why they would sign him. So that's a sign that look, I give them credit. I'm not saying they're going to sign this guy or even make an offer. We know that they're interested. The point is this: I give them credit for not giving anything back to Rager. He's got to earn it. Like you gotta do your job. Like you can't just wait. As a coaching staff, it's not their fault.
Right.
Rager's got to do better.
Right.
And Roseman can't wait. I understand he made the pick, but the fact of the matter is, they got to move on here in terms of the return game. I mean, that's got to be improved.
And I would also say they kind of lack an obvious candidate for some of the outside of Jalen who struggled there, and we'll talk about him in a second. But Boston Scott has been a kick returner, but he's a restricted free agent. We don't know his future. Greg Ward has been Mr. Play It Safe punt returner. He's a restricted free agent.
Fair catch.
May not have a future with Mr. Fair Catch. I'm sorry, return.
Barring a miracle, you can't you obviously they're not going to tender him, but I just this staff for whatever reason I don't agree with it. This guy, see, let me ask you a question. When you watch the game, isn't just catching the ball and getting open important?
For this team, yeah. For the Eagles, yes.
Right. What do they have against Greg Ward? I don't care that he doesn't run fast. The guy, all he does is get open. I know he had a couple of bad drops last season, but look, he's not perfect.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't.
You got to crawl before you walk, right? So I mean, this guy can always catch the ball.
Just right, and he does.
Right, but I mean, it gets back to do you keep him at 2.5?
No, they're not. No, but again, my point was this: you're obviously not going to tender him.
Right.
You give them. You tell the agent, listen, we'll give you $1 million. We'll fully guarantee it, or just
they might do that. No,
but,
no?
Okay. I'm sure his agent. This part's a guess.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is they won't tender him, not offer him anything, because the staff clearly doesn't value the guy.
I guess so. I guess you're right. You're probably right about that. I mean, they did start to value him at the end of the year.
Late. I was just going to say they did play him late, and it's like almost they had to,
right?
Because they had nowhere else to go. But I don't know. I feel bad for Greg Ward. He deserves better. Oh well.
Well, you know what? He'll probably find up a spot somewhere, so don't feel too bad for him. He'll be good. So you have uncertainty with. Well, I mean, you're probably not having Greg Ward and Boston Scott back, so you really don't have your kick returner, your punt returner. Quez Watkins could return punts, I believe. Kenny Gainwell could return kicks, but he kind of struggled in that area.
Yep.
He was doing the same thing, taking the ball out when it was kicked deep and not getting back to the 25. So Richie is an experienced guy there. He's got a lot of do we give the overall? I know we gave that one game, but trying to look if I can find his punt return. He's got a kick return for a touchdown. He averaged 8 yards per punt return in 2019, which is like pretty decent for the league anymore. He's a good kick returner. Although it's weird, he didn't return that many kicks last year, but he did in 2018 and 2019. So, and he averaged 25.5 per return in 2018 and 21.5 in 2019. So he's got some versatility there, and we'll see. This is probably not going to be a day one free agency type of move. I can't imagine.
No,
but
he's hurt a lot too. Unfortunately, he's definitely had a pretty significant injury history the last 2 years.
Right.
So he actually didn't wind up playing last year. He got hurt. He got put on IR in September.
That's right. That's right.
And so, and he went on IR last year, came back. Enough time to have that huge game, but he's an interesting player out of Middle Tennessee State, MTSU, for those who watch sports.
There you go. All right, before we get out of here, like I said, we're not going to get into too many names of anything, but we can just tell coming back from the combine that some areas the Eagles have been poking around, and it's not going to be. This is not earth-shattering news, but they're poking around at safety because they need safeties. They literally need. I mean, it's the position they need the most to just be able to line up and play a game because both Anthony Harris and Rodney McLeod have expiring contracts. And so that really just leaves them with Marcus Epps and Kayvon Wallace, who are under contract. So I've heard a couple of names and they range from like, hey, this guy's a no name to this guy, maybe would be a 1-year deal type thing. So we'll try to get a little bit more on that by the time we have our next podcast, which will be Thursday morning.
Oh, and then ends. We heard they're searching. They're
yes, pass rushers as well.
Yes,
correct.
Again, as Geoff said, there's not a surprise. These are ones they have to do. Though I would tell you that I wouldn't rule out a sort of high price safety. Where we did, you and I heard separately of one pretty good safety that's out there, but it's really not been their history of doing that. So that's the thing that's so confusing because, as the GM said, Roseman last week, that the big thing for them is now they've got that 1 year under their belt to understand what the coaches want on both sides of the football.
Mm-hmm.
But does Gannon think does he need a high end safety? Does he, they like Epps. He's been a good story, but obviously do they re-sign McLeod for 1 more year or Harris? One of the, I don't see both returning, but maybe do they bring one of them back? I'm wondering because I know how much this burns you. Would they ever change their philosophy?
Get out of here. I'm doing a whole podcast on that. People are tired of hearing us talk about that.
Someday, come on. Someday it's got to. I mean, could you at least, if they're not going to sign the guy from the Texans, who's Coach Sell spoke very highly of, Justin Reed.
Oh yeah, Justin Reed. Yeah.
But I mean, could you get a good young safety? It doesn't have to be $12 million a year, but could you get someone who's sort of undervalued, who's a good football player? I mean, just.
Well, that's what they did with Rodney. That's what they did with Rodney.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah. It's a market, not above market safety. Could you just get a market guy who's 26? You could go with. Come on.
I'm sure that's how he's saying, hey, we've done that. We'll do that. All right. They got to sign somebody. They can't just sit there and draft their way to a starting safety tandem. They clearly didn't get what they wanted yet out of Kayvon Wallace. So I mean, they can't just rely on the draft. Can't do that anyway. But yeah, so we'll have some more. I think the next couple of days are going to be crucial for you and I working the phones and doing what we do. And that will do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Hunter Brody. Check out his work on YouTube. It's called Sports Talk with Broads. He's got a great website called broadsmedia.com. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.